And now it is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Dave Lewis, who is going to moderate our panel discussion. And he's been a producer, freelance art buyer for a long time. Thank you, David.
Thanks, Carl. Wow, welcome everyone. This is amazing. It's been a long time since I've talked in front of 250 people before. Really looking forward to the conversation we're going to have tonight. As we have been talking about this idea of the new unknown, it got down to, it sort of came down to the creative process, the energy of that, and also the energy of change. And there's a lot of creative people in this room, and this industry is full of a lot of changes. So the more we tossed around the spirit of that, we got down to some basic elements. And those elements are love and passion for what you do, vulnerability, staying vulnerable so you can create something, and honesty. How do you stay honest through this process? And that kind of process where you're making something and you're not making it for someone else, you're making it because you love it so much that you're immersed in that vulnerability and you're being honest, and it's about how cool it is. You're not thinking, God, I hope they like this. You're just like, wow, this is amazing. So how do we hold on to that? And our panel is going to give us their perspective on these topics, and it's amazing that they're all here. So Darrell Eager is here. Please come up, Darrell. And Laura Beckwith is here. And Timothy Archibald is here. And one more chair open for Julian Richards.
Yeah!
All right, let's get started. Consult the book. So I'd like each of you to talk for, up to 5 minutes about what was your path to get to where you are today. And just tell everyone your story. Timothy, thanks for agreeing to start. You can grab that mic right there. And
Sure. Hey there, thank you.
Go ahead and take it off. Take it off. Yeah, there you go.
Can people hear me? So how did I get here? I think photographers, their stories are oftentimes kind of similar in a way. Like, photography is something you can discover at a young age and kind of start to accomplish something with. Like, it's kind of pretty, the entry point is pretty easy, and I discovered it as a teenager when I was 14. And, the unique thing about that for me was, it wasn't like I was going to school and I discovered it and it didn't have any need to support me or to have a function. It was purely something I thought was cool. And as a 14-year-old kid, it was my first little tool of self-expression. And I thought that was a neat way to get into it, because I didn't worry about, like, I'm going to be a lifestyle photographer, I'm going to be an ad shooter, any of those things. And it was just something that allowed me to express myself. And I didn't know what I was going to do with my life occupationally, but I think at that time I knew I'd always have a relationship with photography. And so, that little sentence is the thing that I think has kind of carried me through various ups and downs, career and all of those things, And so now, I'm a commercial photographer and I do editorial work in commercial photography, and I have my personal projects that, have some attention in the art world. But really, I think it is, I define it as it's this long relationship with photography that kind of has carried me, I guess, to this place now.
Cool.
I'd end it there.
Awesome. Thanks,
Sure.
Timothy. Laura?
Hi. I went to North Carolina School of the Arts and got my bachelor's of fine arts there. And during that time, I was also doing many different art forms and picking up photography, and landed in Manhattan. Instead of just waiting tables, I started sleeving negatives and working at studios. And for the last 16 years have been from a studio manager, a really crappy photo assistant, then went on to work as an agent, a producer before that, then moved into being an agent for hair and makeup and stylists. And then I developed a photo division at an agency and went to Paris and pulled and discovered different photographers there and brought them back to the States. And then from that, I went to another agency and became a full-time rep. And during the recession, when everybody was looking for work, I did something really crazy. I quit my job. And I quit my job because I felt that during that time, something really big was happening. And when I was at School of the Arts, I was always told, you're gonna fail. Look around the room right now and know that probably one of you is going to succeed. So failing was already a given. So I was working in a business where it was all about money, and everybody's running around saying, I can't make $10,000 anymore, my life is over, getting ready to end it all. And I said, wait a minute, we're the ones that are supposed to get really excited and charged during this time. This is when we excel. Why is everybody here freaking out? We're supposed to be artists, and we're already told we were gonna fail. So what's the problem? So I saw this going on, quit a very great job, and partnered up with somebody that had been in my life for a long time, Judy Casey, and went and told her I had all these crazy ideas in my head and all this stuff going on, and she said, let's do it, and write it down. And I sat in a room and read How to Build a Business for Dummies, read the first chapter, threw the book aside, and wrote a manifesto. And that manifesto is now the Garden Party. And it's an agency that is completely focused on embracing this new creative landscape and allowing a place for artists to be 360 degrees, to take who you are, not just what you do, but to give you power, to walk into the room and say, I am a creative force. Just who I am and what my brand is. I take pictures, I'm a photo editor, I'm also a curator, and take all of that into the room and not leave that behind. And to sit at the table with creatives and be a creative. And that now for me is 3 years, and have seen this company really grow and had an amazing opportunity to develop and also continue really strong relationships, and also to help answer the challenge of, how do we sell things to a market that we don't really know how to monitor anymore. And a big part of it was no longer being the one saying, it's your responsibility as the creative agency, we're just here, you're commissioning us, but us saying we're in this together, and we're gonna make a campaign that is gonna keep everybody's jobs, and that we're responsible and we're a part of this too with you. So, and it all went back to being, in college and being a part of a community and being excited by that idea. And that's that.
Cool. Julian?
Me?
You.
I guess I'm a little bit the imposter here because I don't work in the photo industry anymore. But I was an agent for, I used to pretend that I was an agent for about 15 years because I wasn't enormously proud of it. But in fact, I was an agent for about 21 years. How I got started was that I lived in England. I used to come to New York. I worked in theater. I had my own theater company. And I used to come to New York in the late 80s, early 90s, when New York was still a really exciting place. And I lived in London. And London wasn't exciting. And then I wasn't earning any money. I loved theater, I still love theater, and I still love the theater element of everything that it is that we do, which is the main impulse for working in this business. And I came over and I found that in New York people were open to the idea of opportunity. I was, people asked me to do different things. And so I left theater, I fell in love, I got married, I left theater, and one of the things I was asked to do, I did a lot of shitty jobs, but one of the things I was asked to do was work in a photographer's studio. And it was warm, and you got a sandwich at lunch. which was pretty cool. So I was like, you know what? I'll try and stick around here. And so I sat there. I had to like clean the studio and do stupid stuff or whatever. But I was always a talker, always a chatterer. And so shoots would come in. It was like this. I won't even say who it was, but it was this. It was a very kind of commercial, still life, fragrance bottles, golden glow. 20 people all gathered around one little fragrance bottle with bits of gold shit and stuff, and like talking all day and taking one shot on 4x5. And I would just start chattering. And so the guy who had the studio was like, well, you know what? Why? I don't have an agent. So as you're good at talking to these people, why don't you keep talking to them and like take a commission? So I did. That was very commercial. And then a couple of other people who were friends who were working in the photo industry were like, well, why don't we just kind of do this together? And they were assistants. So we did. We had no purchase in the market at all. We were completely meaningless, which gave us an enormous amount of power in the beginning to be subversive, to do whatever seemed like a good idea. And I was coming from a theater background where like the idea of going to some agency or something with a bunch of portfolios and knocking on someone's door and telling them why they ought to use us was just a complete an anathema. And it still is an anathema. I still find that whole thing abhorrent, abominable. So we were like, well, how else can we do this? How else can we find some way to attract attention to ourselves? So we were starting from a position of being, I guess, subversive and making weird noises in weird corners and hoping that if you made the right kind of weird noises, the people who are out there who heard those weird noises, who are the people that you want to work with, would find you. And so you wouldn't go looking for them. And that's what we did over a period of probably about 6 or 7 years. I worked with people who were absolutely at the bottom of the pile, but were good, and were cool and understood what the hell we were going for. The caveat I put on that is there was once we were successful, we then started to trade in, I guess, a little bit of what we'd done in the beginning. Then we started to chase more work, and we started to become more comfortable with the idea of like, shit, this works. And then we kind of threw the baby out with the bathwater a little bit and became a little bit more mainstream. Stayed with that for maybe another 5-7 years until it kind of drove me out of my mind. And then I stopped, which was 6 months ago. And that's where I am now. Confused.
Yeah, welcome to the party, right?
Okay, well, I'm Darrell, and when I was younger, I thought photography was about the stupidest thing there was. I just didn't understand it. If you couldn't paint or if you couldn't draw, then you really weren't doing anything. And so then to support myself, I ran a body shop. I mean, my whole life, all I wanted to do was build custom cars and custom motorcycles. That was it. And that was cool. But one of the guys that was working for me, he needed money, and he had a camera that he wanted to sell me. And I'd never had a camera before. I mean, I had little Instamatics and things like that, but never a real camera. And so what he sold me was a Kawa, which is like a cross between an RZ and a Hasselblad, just a big piece of metal. And so he sold it to me, and I got the enlarger and all the chemicals. And so he showed me how to load it, and then he gave me a book on processing film. And so I started shooting, and well, this is okay, but it's kind of bland and whatever. And then I just started playing with it and playing with it. And then I started thinking, well, it doesn't have to be just things that I see, it can be something else. And so I started making different images, and then I started just playing around. And then I started making some real work, and I entered my first contest, which was the state fair, and I took first place. And I thought, well, this is kind of cool, and all of a sudden it's not so bad. And then I started working more and becoming a little more serious. And then I was accepted to a show at Minneapolis-St of Art. And so I did a group show with the top creative photographers in the 5-state area. And I thought, well, that is really cool. And so then I started showing in galleries, and that was fun. And so we got to go to all the gallery crawls, and you got patted on the back, and everybody said how great you were, and all this kind of stuff. Well, and all that's great. But I'm working on all this stuff, and I'm spending all this time, and it's like, this is expensive. And in galleries at that time, photography never sold because Minnesotans always think that I can do that. I can just take my own camera and shoot that. I don't have to hire you. And so one of the gallery operators said, why don't you go commercial? And so I said, okay, I'll try that. And a friend of mine owned an ad agency. And I said, okay, well, who should I bring my portfolio to? And he said, give me a name. And I took it to him, and he said, you should go to New York. You'll do really well there. You stay here, you will die, because they just won't understand it. And I thought, well, I don't believe that, because Dayton's was here at the time. And I don't know how many people remember Dayton's, but Dayton's was like the greatest store in the world, and they did the most creative stuff anywhere. I mean, they were unbelievable. So that became a goal, shooting for Dayton's. Donaldson's was also at the time a really good, they actually used to shoot fashion in this town. You probably don't believe it, but they used to shoot real fashion. We're not talking lifestyle, we're talking fashion. And it was really cool stuff. And so that's what I thought I would do. Well, so how do you get into fashion? So there was a Film in the Cities. All right. So they used to have classes. And there was a class taught by Doug Beasley. All right, great man. And so I took his class, and him and I hit it up really, really well. And we became really, really good friends. And I don't remember what grade he gave me in the class, but I think it was okay. He said, well, whenever you get done working and you want to shoot, he said, you can shoot out of my studio. So between that, I had gone and taken some workshops. I went to Friends of Photography down in California, and did a workshop with Joel Peter Whitkin. Anybody know that? That was a trip. Yeah, and we got portfolio reviews, and so when I came back from that, I could do no wrong, and so I was really ready to go, and so I got a hold of Doug, and I said, I'm ready, and he said, well, come on by. I called my friend who owned the agency, and he had me started shooting for Treasure Island. So I was shooting ads for Treasure Island, and then some other casino. And then in the area that I would visit all these other designers, and they really liked my work, and then they would go to press checks, and then other designers would see the work that I was doing for them, and they would call me, and the next thing I know, I was getting calls after calls after calls to do this stuff. And they weren't calling me saying, we have a job for you. They would call and say, we have a project, what would you like to do? Now you can do whatever you want. We're calling on you to tell us what you want this project to be. That's how it used to be. And so that was cool. So I was working all the time, and I could go by any design firm, and I could just stop in and just talk to them and visit with the head creative. I didn't have to call any of that stuff. When a design firm started up, they would call me up and say, can you come by and talk to the people? Tell them what your process is and how you do it. And so I got accustomed to that I was the creative. And so I would go to ad agencies and show my portfolio, and I would talk to them, and they would go, no, no, no. We're the creatives. We hire you. And so I could see that wasn't going to be a fit. So what I decided was I was just going to do what I wanted to do, and if it wasn't, if it didn't fit in, then that was fine. But I always wanted to be the boss of what happened. And so I lost a lot of work, you know, but I always did what I wanted to do. And that's where I am. Is that 5 minutes?
Wow, that's cool. Thanks, everyone. So, you know, I've been talking with you for a short period of time, and you all have passion in common. You know, you're all really passionate about what you do or what you've done, or sometimes just in the moment with your stories. So, I'd like you to talk about what you love about your creative process, or maybe where love is in that, you know? Maybe how you feed your passion, you keep it fueled throughout the changes that are going on with you right now. And we can flip a coin if anyone's inspired. No, that's, yeah, who wants to do it? Darrell, great.
I think to do creative work, somebody has to give you the ability. They have to open it up to you. And if you're in a really constrained situation, they're going to kill it. And that's one of the things that happens a lot, that they have to give you the ability, the opening, and so that you can wow yourself. But if everything is so locked in, how do you do that? And yeah, I mean, what you can do is you can do a lot of creative work, and they will hire you because of what they've seen, but now you're just a filter. You're an Instagram filter that they want to put on their project. And you've got to be able to be creative with that project. And that's one of the things that I think that we're losing a little bit, is we're losing some of the control of our own creativity and letting, I mean, yes, they're the creatives. That's the word in front of their title, you know, but that doesn't mean they're just guys. They're just women, you know. They're not I mean, they've got the dollars. They're the ones who pay the checks. But we've got to get their respect back, you know, and respect our creative abilities rather than saying, okay, no, this is the way it's done, and not giving you any freedom to do what you want to do, what you know how to do, and you want them to hire for what you are and what you do and the creativity you have in your mind, not for the fact that you have this camera and you have a studio, you know, and you've got the budget, you know. I mean, it's. A lot of times the project is defined by the budget. You know, well, we'd really like you to have you shoot it. We'd love to work with you, but we just don't have the money. So we're going to have to go with him. Well, what does that mean for him? And what does that mean for me? You know, I mean, it's all dollars. You know, okay, I want it good, but I guess I don't want it that good. Let's just have it partially good, you know. And that's where it's gone a lot. And I truly believe that I've seen projects where I bid on, and they've said, you know, we like your work, you're just too expensive. And then I've seen the final product, and it just rips my heart out, because I knew that shot. When they sent me the brief, I had it lit, I had everything laid out, I knew exactly what I wanted, I knew exactly what it was going to look like, and it was going to be drop dead beautiful, and I knew that was going to be great, and I saw it, and it broke my heart. It was just terrible. You know, it was. Nobody cared about the lighting. Nobody cared about this. Nobody cared about anything. No one cared about the pose. You know, and this was supposed to be a big deal. And so, yeah, you get passionate about what you do. You get passionate about what you lose, what you've lost. You know, but so then it's what it is. It's about finding a way to continue that passion, and just finding out, you know, okay, what is it that I need to do to get me where I need to be so that I'm still happy with what I'm doing? And that's what I'm working on now.
That's the stuff right there. That's it. Laura?
Yeah, I just want to give a kind of it's great, but then the perspective of an agent. And the simple term of creative process. And having been in, you know, classical training, the creative process is something very personal, and it's something that you need to take care of like a temple and a shrine. And what I look for representation isn't just a great book and great images, but how you get from A to Z is how I can sell you and work with you. And that in itself is advertising. So I see all these great fine art photographers and whatever, and I think, oh God, your stuff is so beautiful, but it would be for this and that. But they have no process. They go in and they quietly go into this little world, and I'm like, okay, that's not advertising, because the process of how you get to that image is a part of the whole package. And the other part of it too is that as a rep, it's my job to protect your creative process. So many times when I do a bid, it's not just about the numbers and lines, but sometimes I can be very staunch about the fact you can't take these certain things away, because I know my artist, and I know if you do, you're not gonna get the image that you want. That if you take these certain things away for his process, then he's gonna be jumping around on one leg to try to take that image. And I can't give you the thing that you're asking for and what you're paying for. So I, say very kindly, we've got to keep that third assistant. We've got to do the equipment. It's got to be at this place. Trust me, you pay this little bit more, you're going to get it. You're going to get the image that you're paying for. So I think that, it really starts off in a very personal aspect for you of taking the time and figuring out a very, logistical way of how you get to your images, and then how do you include other people in that process. Because when you're doing advertising, you have to open up your set. You have to make room for the creatives to be a part of it. And I think that many people, creatives, they're just like you. I mean, they have a resume, they have a job, they want to work and build stuff that's really great work also. They want to keep their jobs. So they want to be able to collaborate with you on that process, and they have their process too. So it's like everybody has to come into the room and kind of figure out how to put that all together. And in a way, as you were talking about theater, which is also where my background, that is what an ensemble is. It's one through line that everybody's working for and has that commitment to achieve, and that everybody has to make room for each other as a group to achieve that one thing. And that is like the holier than thou of what's got to get done. And all those egos and all that other stuff has got to be put aside, and you've got to just, as a team, just come in there and say, okay, this is our objective.
So Laura, can you give an example? Can you flip that and talk for a little bit about how you nurture how you work with your artists to have them bring more to the table than they may initially want to do?
Well, I love developing
artists. What kind of changes do they need to make, where first it's like, ouch, and then it's like, okay, that's cool, or I can work with that, or they start to practice differently.
What it comes down to is if somebody's willing to. Sometimes people aren't, and that's okay. Sometimes people don't want to change their process. Sometimes people, if you like what you're doing and you think it works, then do it. You need to also know that relationship with your agent is a relationship. So I need people, when they work with me, to trust me that I'm an outside objective. I'm an outside viewer to their process. And I try to very kindly, because you guys have tender souls and egos to, massage it. You're very emotional beings. You really, you want to succeed so bad. So it's, it's just nurturing that a bit and saying that, that was good, but it could be better. And I think I have an idea of how we can do this, Like, it was a good shoot. You did it, you got the image, we did this, but now let's take the next step. And we try to listen to each other. So those times when they're not shooting or they're not working, and we're working on the portfolio and we're working on their website or we're working on a promo, we really try to, communicate with each other of like what I'm seeing when I'm out there selling and what they're wanting in their lives, That's a big part of it. But some people aren't ready for that, and that's totally fine.
Right. Right, because I think maybe there's a part of an artist where you imagine yourself isolated and you emerge from your studio or your location with this perfect little thing, and like you did it all yourself, and that so rarely happens. Like, our influences come in, in many ways we can't even recognize sometimes. And I think collaboration and advice, having a mentor, and probably being one are all really good things.
Exactly, and trusting that. I think that the people that you search out as your mentors, you got to listen to, and then you have to be careful. I say this all the time, and to my artists, I can give so much advice, but ultimately, when I see my artists grow, is always when they've worked with a great creative. something happens on that set. When they open themselves up and they have a great person and a team, they learn leaps and bounds with that team and walk away. And I see it on the next shoot. It's like they're ready, like something changes. And I wasn't a part of that. I wasn't in there, and it wasn't me.
Sure.
And that is completely about just, working together and having the opportunity to work with, an insightful creative.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, that mentor comment that I just made about have a mentor and be one. Thank you, Kat Gallagher, wherever you are. You said that 5 years ago or 6, and that stuck with me. So I guess that's kind of what I'm talking about. Timothy.
I'll add a little bit here, and it is the neat thing about this forum is we do have everybody coming at it from a different angle here,
Yeah.
And so that I just wanted to kind of just reflect it on that. But I guess the sentence that we started with here was the idea of passion. Is that true?
Yes,
and
it is.
Really,
yeah.
I do think that everybody in this room wouldn't really be here if they weren't really passionate about some aspect of what they're doing right now. So it's almost like a given, I think, for everybody here. But I do remember the one kind of thing that stuck with me is when I started to try to work commercially. I remember I was so excited to finally be getting assignments, and a magazine would hire me, and then, an advertising agency would hire me to do something. And, I was kind of drunk on the high of being wanted and needed with these things. And then at the end of the year, kind of looked at this work. I remember I showed it to a friend of mine, and they said, well, it's all great that you got yourself into these positions, but, what's do you like any of these images? And truth be told, they were fine, but, I think I started to feel like, am I squandering my talent, or is this what I fought so hard for, is to take a picture of Charles Schwab in his office and then it ran as a double-page spread in a magazine? I was psyched, my ego liked the fact that the magazine liked it, but in the end, how memorable were these images, And I think it was at that point that I realized that, for me to be really happy with this and to tap back into this passion, well, I want to buy groceries, and I want to have kids, and I want to have a normal life, and so I need to make a living. But that can happen in this other world, But for me to be feel like I'm not wasting my talent or my passion, I needed to start doing work for myself, and I needed to, create projects that I worked on for a long period of time that would kind of sustain me. And magazines could fire me, places could never hire me again. I could blow shoots more, epically than you could ever imagine. But in the end, my personal project was there to comfort me when I got home, and it was something I could build piece by piece and little by little. And, for me, I do think that if I just did assignments, I wouldn't really be here amongst you all, and there'd be nothing, I wouldn't really have anything interesting to say. But it was my personal work that did then begin to get me more fascinating assignments and be considered a little different than the rest of my peers. And I think it allowed me to kind of remember what I was passionate about again.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, actually, yeah. I guess I'm a little bit different from what was said a little bit earlier, because I don't come from, I guess I'm a little bit in your area on that. I don't come from a place where the industry and what was going on in the industry and what we were seeing in the industry was really of any interest to me at all. Honestly, without trying to be a bummer about it, I found 99% of it utterly banal. I walked through an airport the other day, having stopped doing this, and looked around at stuff that I used to have to lionize all the time, and realized, oh my God, it's monstrous. It's monstrous. The visual pollution that's on the walls of airports and wherever we go, it's so banal. It's so lowest common denominator. So what do you do from a perspective of someone like me? Then I'm not in a chasing situation where I'm like, hey, there's this cool shit that we should be trying to get. It's a weird place to be, because you kind of know, you need it and you want it, and you have a bunch of people on board who are like, well, how do we get it? But the focus for us when we were at our best was always basically, how can we pull a fast one on the business? How can we do what we're doing? How can we kind of misbehave? How can we be naughty and get, and as a byproduct, get some of this shit? And that felt like a creative challenge for me. Because you know what, my ass isn't on the line. I was never the person going out with a camera who had to execute any of this shit. I was the person who was saying like, look, you know, I'll try to alchemize something where I appeal maybe to that last grain of imagination, you know, because again, looking at people who are working at agencies, they're ground down, you know? I mean, we can call those agencies, you know, I don't want to insult anybody, but we can, you know, there's agencies across the country with creative departments. They're not terribly creative. I mean, that's just the facts. They're just not. So, you know, so for us, we were in a place where we were like, is there a way to do this where we can create some kind of alchemy whereby we're doing something cool, which you can call it personal work, or you can go, yeah, I guess it is personal work. In the end, it was like us getting together and being like, what should we do? What would be fun? What would be cool? What would be a little bit odd? What weird noise can you make that like nobody else is making? And it's not even as contrived as that. It's not even that nobody else is making it. It's that it's a noise that you want to make. And in the beginning, I was lucky. I had 4 or 5 people on board who were like, you know what, that's what I want to do. I just want to make these weird noises. And they weren't artists, or they weren't calling themselves artists. I mean, an example would be, he's a very good kind of emblem, is Chris Buck. You guys know, you know who that is? Really good example, because there's somebody who was like, you know what, I want this stuff, you know, he's got a kid, he's got a mortgage, he's got all that shit that he has to service. But the driving mentality underneath that, in some way, to have a voice that is something different, not just from an ego basis, but because like when you're in there and when you're making it happen, you're like, well, what else is the point? Otherwise, photography is being a glorified plumber. And it is like it. It's like a blue-collar job. It's like, you know what, turn up here, fly there, get out of the plane, go stay at this hotel, turn up at this place, do this stuff, this is what it's supposed to look like, are you going to be able to do that, or whatever, and then turn around, go home, and hopefully get relatively well paid for it. But what's that? Why are we even here? You know, if we're here talking about something that's to do with creativity, that is the bulk of commercial work.
So is Chris able to hang on to that momentum then?
Yeah,
when
you know what it is?
He can, because it looks like it from the stuff I see in his blog that he's really.
Yeah, and you know why?
It's interesting. No.
Well, because you know, not because there's some manifesto that he has,
right,
but because the guy's kind of a freak. You know, because
yeah,
he's actually motivated as a human being. And this is the problem with a discussion like this, because in the end, what you want to say is trust the truth of what you really want to do. Trust whatever that impulse is. Be like, you know what? Because that's your best chance. The bad news about that is that everybody doesn't have it. So you can't throw a blanket over that and say, okay, well, if everybody says and does exactly what they really feel like they're supposed to do, you know, the skies will open, there'll be some amazing epiphany, and the gods will point down at you and you'll make millions of dollars. The guy has it. You know, that's either just or unjust or whatever it is. And, you know, whether it's from his childhood or all the kind of things that he has to prove to other people, the guy that bullied him in the playground, I don't know whatever it is that makes the guy motivated to be like, no, shit, I have a legacy here. I got to get something done. This is not good enough to just turn up and do, you know, IBM ads or whatever. So
do you think it's possible then to, Chris is a great example of someone who, you know, you see it in his work. I'm not sure if he's making $50,000 a day to do that, but can you hold on to that kind of stuff?
Some people can.
You know, and
but some people don't.
Maybe doing, let's say, not work that you want to, or maybe worse yet, not doing any work and having to do something else. Or having like a big pause. Can you hold on to that?
Well, not doing any work and having to do something else renders the whole, it's like a nil-sum equation at that point. But the, you know, can you do that? Yeah. But the examples of people who are really doing that are few and far between.
Sure.
And there's a reason for that.
See, but I wonder if there are some people that are holding up. What I'm talking about is that base level of this kind of love and passion about a process. Can you guys still, can you have that without having an outcome that is attached to dollars or honestly that no one else sees?
At the end of the day, every one of the artists that I represent, you can't be in this business without heart and passion and do your own personal work. I mean, when the phone doesn't ring, you still have to be making content. You still have to be doing it. And no one can teach you to do that. That's authentic. That's from your heart. That's your soul. That's why you do it. Like, you know, as Julian was saying, it's who knows where it comes from, but that is your authentic voice, and you've got to have that. I mean, it's so competitive now that I don't know many people that just go shoot advertising and don't do anything else. Yeah, they all lost jobs when I was doing it during the recession. I had all these photographers, and I was an agency with 25 people that were working every single day, but they never took a picture in their personal time. And then when it came time, they all lost their jobs because everybody was pulling stuff in-house. And they were like, what the hell's going on? Why am I not still working? And I was like, you're not taking any pictures. You're not picking up your camera anymore. And they're like, well, I don't want to. I get paid to pick it up. And it was like baffling to me. And they lost work because all of these, you know, people that were really hungry and still had passion were coming through and were shooting still. And there's still to this day, I've seen people that just fell out.
You know, sorry, go ahead, Julian. This is kind of leading into our next thing. That was great. Clap, please.
That's true. That's true, and I wish it was that just. I wish it was that just. That you know, because again, when I had an agency, I had a whole bunch of people who were doing one thing, and then I had a couple of people who were still hanging on to it. But to be honest, and thank God there's none of them here, I had some people who were exactly in that situation, who I'm like, when was the last time you picked up a camera in combat at all? And they're like, well, you know, I kind of did something when I was on that, you know, on my day off on that IBM shoot or whatever. You're like, oh my God. But if there was any justice, they wouldn't have been getting work. But you know what? They were getting work. They were getting work. So for me as an agent, I'm like, well, that puts me in a really invidious situation. Because actually I've got people, because we had long relationships. You know, I mean, that's the other thing. This is not entirely a creative business. 90% of the work out there could be done by an awful lot of people. There's very, very few campaigns that came under my nose that I would be like, you know what, the only person who can do this is this person. Most of it is very banal. It can be done by a lot of different people. So who's going to get the job? Is it always going to be the most creative person? No, you know what? People have a relationship with people. They're very, very reliable. They're a super cool guy, blah, 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 and so they get the work. So it's not about that justice isn't there. But as an agent, yeah, after a period of time, you're going out of your mind because that juice is not there. You're just plowing old furrows.
This is great. This is moving right into the vulnerability, a lot of this stuff, because it's really.
Before you go too far.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bill. Yeah.
There's a lot more. I mean, there's a lot more than shooting. You know, I mean, when I wasn't working, I wasn't shooting a lot. I didn't have projects, any of that stuff. So I would go to galleries, and I would go to movies, and I would go to things that would fire up my brain. And then, when somebody called you up with a project and said, we want you to do this, and you've just been to a David Hockney show, and you've just seen his latest work, and it fits perfectly into the shot that you're going to do. And so you take what you've seen in this gallery, and you apply it to your own work. Now, is that stealing? Maybe, I don't know, but it worked, and the shots were great.
Well, I haven't seen it, but I would call that inspiration. You got to feed.
But that's the thing.
Spirit.
I mean, so you don't have to shoot all the time because you know sometimes you're just spinning your wheels. What you have to do. I mean, if you want to make yourself better, you have to find out who you are and stay with that. Stay with that person and shoot what you want to shoot and only shoot that. Put in your portfolio what you want to shoot because if you don't, you'll end up shooting stuff you don't want to shoot. You know, and that's been a big problem. So you have to stay really strong with who you are. Well, first you have to find out who you are, and then do that.
God, call me immediately when you figure out that one, please.
Well, no, I mean, I kind of know who I am, and so I know what I'm shooting, and I know what I'm not going to shoot. Now, people hire me for things that I normally wouldn't do, and they pay me an ungodly amount of money to do it, and I'm screaming internally going, why did I do this? I hate this. But I do it anyways, because the money's just too good. But then that also pays for, you know, the time down when you can do your own stuff.
Right.
You know, but you're always shooting stuff, but it's not necessarily a project.
So, as we continue to comment here, I think we can just easily move right into vulnerability. Would you guys agree? Because this is a vulnerable spot. It's like, it's vulnerable to put your work out there. It's vulnerable to, there's a vulnerability in trying to find inspiration. There is a vulnerability in getting the work you want, and there's a vulnerability in not getting any at all, or doing work that you don't want, because you need to pay your mortgage. There's a vulnerability in getting fed up, and I think it was you who said, you know, what am I gonna make for dinner? You know, there's so many layers to this thing. So how do you guys deal with this change? I mean, Laura, your description of how you've done it with your artists is kind of so befitting of the name, the garden party. Because it kind of, I mean, there's an aspect that flowers, right? With, you've been able to take these changes and kind of, you know, well, and make them grow for yourself. You quit your job, partnered with Judy, and now you're helping other people do the same thing. It's probably not 100% successful all the time, or?
It grows steadily, but the thing is that, okay, the name The Garden Party came from the aspect of just trying to come up with an unpretentious way of describing a creative collective. And I also, too, throw amazing garden parties. And when I'd have these garden parties at my house, I'd have like a friend that was a chef and a writer and, you know, a photographer and this and that. And I loved when like, you just like the energy in the night, like kind of like tonight, people would banter and talk and then they'd leave. And then I'd hear a week later, like I got together with Emily and she's making some food and I'm going to shoot it and this and that. And these things would just happen. And as an agent, that's kind of one of my talents, is that I just like to make introductions and just let things happen, you know, and just kind of guide people and open a door and say, okay, you guys should meet this person or whatever. And to me, it's just that in itself is that's my passion.
Sure.
But with the garden party, the difference of why with the recession and this different formula for me was representing artists, trying to bring in what Julian was talking about, having this, you know, but acknowledging it, not trying to get away with it, but just say, you know, we are fine art people too. We've got totally different stuff that we do, you know, from Dan Monick, maybe you guys know, who has a zine company, Fathers and Sons, and he curates and has his own gallery shows, to Anna Wolf, who's an editor-in-chief, that she wasn't getting the editorial she wanted, so screw it. She took her money and she made her own magazine. And Title Magazine now is on its second, you know, issue of it. So things like that, just saying, you know, if I'm not getting the phone calls not happening, I'm going to make my content and I'm going to do my personal projects and make them as valuable as my commission work.
So those are two examples of people that make their change.
Yeah, they are in control and navigate their career.
They can change themselves. They're not sitting around stuck in like, oh God.
Yeah. Oh,
you know,
yeah.
Everything is
this business
awful.
and this recession, and that was what I wanted. Like,
right.
I've always been an advocate of the artist not being a victim. Like, don't be a victim. That's during the recession. Like, it was, oh, woe is me, and all this stuff, and it was like, wait a minute. Like I said, this is, you know, in the United States during their last recession, you know, the National Endowments of Arts came out of it. I mean, you have all this beautiful commission work that came out of it. It transitioned, like, blossom and grow. And I knew that if we could just figure out how to stay not the victims and the power of just keeping to create,
right,
that we could find something different in all of this.
But it's really hard to stay there, because it's like to move forward. To move forward, do you need a contrast? Do you need a contradiction? Do you need something to push up against?
I think you need an authentic voice, and you need to still be really passionate about what you're doing, and you have to walk into the room with your full self.
Yeah.
You know, and you've got, like Julian was saying, you've got to be an artist, and then you also have to be shooting, and you know, you also have to be willing to collaborate and be, you know, taking a picture now used to be 1-2 seconds, boom. Now I say it's like a month. You know, it's like there's so much that goes into just getting that shoot and putting it together, and how you cultivate everything. You know, and I think that it's important to be that like big thinker as an artist now.
Right.
It's like you said, it's not just taking pictures. You've got to stimulate yourself. You've got to have a lot of energy. You've got to be putting yourself out there all the time and being vulnerable.
Sure. Timothy?
Then comes the hard problem, the business part.
Oh, we got to ignore that for this one. This is supposed to be fun.
Panel number 2.
I am wondering, like, who out there would consider themselves like starting out in photography in the audience? Can you raise your hand?
Like, get them up so we can really see.
Yeah,
It's
really
okay.
get 'em up.
Be vulnerable. Raise the hand.
Because, no, that's good. I mean, because this talk of vulnerability, the one thing, I was talking to a couple photographers just before this, we came out here today in the big party in the other room. And, I was struck on two things. Like, when the economy's good, at least in San Francisco where I was, where I do live, like in boom times, the photographers were cutthroat. They were resentful. They were jealous. They were, someone would get a big job, which would be an insanely big job with numbers that would make anybody drool. And everybody's gut feeling would be like, why didn't I get that? He sucks. When the economy tanked,
Oh my God.
it was almost like everybody got a little more empathetic to each other. Everybody was bottoming out. Nobody was doing anything good. And it was like someone would get an editorial job and people were like, oh, I'm so thankful you got $500. Like, take me to coffee. And and there was this, I guess in terms of thinking about vulnerability, I thought that when the economy got bad, I saw people come together, and it sucked for me. I wanted easy money for doing nothing, but it wasn't in the cards, But I do think, like, when you're starting out, there's so many people who prey on the insecurities of photographers. There are so many people who claim to hold the keys to success. And they're going to, if you pay them, they are going to, give you this key that's going to unlock the door. And then even the magazines, Photo District News, which has been nothing but supportive to me. Everybody's story, though, is about, they entered communication arts and they entered a contest and boom, the next thing you know, Pepsi campaign. It doesn't work that way. Everyone has had a long journey in trying to get to a place, except Darrell. Darrell had fast success, probably. But,
No, Darrell said awards don't make your work better.
The virtue of ignorance is my whole key.
Oh, don't enter these things.
No, I didn't know I couldn't do it, so I did it. And so.
You did win first place
Could
at the
you guys
county
hear
fair
that
thing.
in the back? Yeah, nice.
Yeah. Yeah, but I do feel that, like, we need to. There's, these big portfolio reviews, where everybody can pay money to have people review your stuff. You have your contemporaries. You have your other photographers that are your peers. You guys can review each other's work. You can critique each other's work. You can grow that way. You don't need to fall for these other things. Use that money to work on your work. Use that money to produce your project or whatever it is you're doing, or your thing that looks like commercial work. Like, I do think that it's the tough times that did make people more resourceful, And, like, I do think that there was, at one point, as the economy was tanking, the amount of portfolio reviews in New York alone, like, there should have been, legal action to shut these things down. It was like a crime against humanity. So expensive and so many of them. And then even, Photo District News, again, I love the magazine. The amount of content, every month a contest, like the Smile contest, the Rock and Roll contest, the Lifestyle contest. Like, at some point, these things, when there's so many of them, they don't mean anything anymore. Of course, I do enter them, but,
Everyone.
Everyone,
right?
yeah. But, I do think it's just, you got to be aware of when is someone milking you and when are they not. And I do think there's an entire cottage industry of people swarming around photographers. Hey, the first one's free. So that's it. I'll stop.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, hand it to Julian.
Yeah, I guess on the question of vulnerability isn't even one that needs to be explored. It just is vulnerable. It's not something that we have to work on. The state of trying to be a photographer in a place where there are far too many photographers and there are far too many schools out there prepared to take people's money to say, like, hey, you know what, I'll educate you as a photographer. We said this at dinner the other day. When I was back in the 80s, everybody wanted to be an actor because they'd all seen Fame or they'd all seen whatever the fuck. Photographer looks like a good gig. It kind of looked like a good gig to me, too. So it's like, shit, really? I could have a life doing that? And when you look at it, when you look at the people who are doing it, it is a good gig, even with all the pressures or whatever. You won't want to do anything else. It's pretty fucking cool. You know, you get a call, someone puts you on an airplane, you go and do this thing or whatever. But of course it's a vulnerable position to be in because there's way too many of you and there's a tiny industry, and also the bulk of the material that the industry is putting out, as I've said before, is not that exciting. So, you know, you're automatically, de facto, in a state of vulnerability to begin with. What are you going to do with that? I mean, yeah, there are contests, there are reworking your portfolio, there's looking at the work and saying, well, maybe my work should be a little bit more like this, or there's trying to chase work, or there's trying to establish what styles are and make your work be. But you know what, honestly, if you're in that game where you're doing any of those things, you're kind of, you're behind the, I don't know what the metaphor is, you're behind the thing that you're supposed to be in front of.
Oh, you're chasing the thing.
You're chasing. As soon as you're chasing, I mean, that was another thing about having the agency. You know, when we moved from leading, when we moved from shooting above the target to shooting at the target, almost immediately, most of your arrows drop short. You gotta shoot above the target. And you know what? If you're not capable of shooting above the target, there's got to be something else to do that you're better suited at, that all of your creative energy and your creative juice, I mean, this isn't for everybody. You know, just because we've decided it is, doesn't mean that, like, empirically, the market or whatever else is gonna, just because we want it, doesn't mean it's gonna happen. But, you know, your best shot is to shoot above the target. And is to, you know, that's a very vulnerable state to be in, but to shoot above the target and see if in some way you can lead. I mean, everybody is attracted to bright light. Whatever anybody does, and you know, whether now I'm helping run a restaurant, or you know, whatever we're doing, all the rules are still exactly the same, which is if you burn brightly, if you truly burn brightly, people are attracted to that. The world is a fairly banal place. You know, people start looking across and they're like, what's going on over there? You know? And people are like, oh, I think I want to be a part of that thing over there. You know, they want to be on the on the beautiful train. You know, so do whatever it is that you do as beautifully as you can possibly do it, and try and be on the beautiful train. Otherwise, you're on the ugly train.
Oh, wow. Wow, so vulnerability, this is the part where you realize that none of us are going to leave with a whole sack full of answers here. You know, these are ideas and perspectives that are really wide. And so how, as artists, how do you stay honest with this stuff? How do you figure out how to be in touch enough, honest enough with yourself to do the personal projects to keep you fueled, to understand that you need to look for inspiration somewhere and fuel yourself, to keep the light burning bright and shooting above these targets? How do you do that?
Well, first, to be honest, you have to figure out who you are. You know,
that's a big one.
I mean,
jeez. Again, when you figure that out, please
well, I mean,
call me immediately.
the thing is it's with the vulnerability. I think you know. We all know that there's this formula when you go to an agency or a design firm. You know their style and you know what's popular. And so you know the right filters to use in Photoshop, and you know that everybody likes the bright and the contrasty, and you know this and you know that. Well, how are you going to be different if you're not different? And so what you got to do is you got to find out some way to be different in a good way. And one of the things too is when I used to do all the books, I never put in there what anybody else thought I should. I always put strange images in there because that's what I wanted. I wanted to shoot something different. I always wanted to shoot different things. I didn't want to do cars, and I didn't want to do lifestyle.
So you put in stuff that spoke to you.
Spoke to me, and I thought would get a rise out of somebody.
Okay.
And even other photographers would say, I don't believe you put that in there. You know, aren't you trying to get work? And it's like, well, this is my way. This is how I get work. And you would get a lot of phone calls, and it would be this people that spoke, made the funny noises, the same funny noises that you would make, and they would call you because they heard your voice, and they would call, and they would give you the job, and they would already know that you were right for the project. And so they gave you that freedom. And then when somebody gives you freedom, then you can collaborate. But collaboration is a two-way street, you know. But first you have to go out there and you have to be different if you want to succeed. And being different is really makes you vulnerable because you have a bigger chance to fail being different, you know. There's you hear a lot of stories about agencies. They say, why did he bring in that book? It's got nothing of the stuff that we do. It's, well, yeah, maybe you should change, you know? Maybe this would be a good direction for your project. You know, I mean, you want to see new stuff, then I bring you new stuff. Then don't get mad at me because I brought you something you haven't seen before. I mean, that's ridiculous, but that's the way it is. That they want to see more of the same. They want to, you know, they've got this vision and they want you to come in, and when they find the right portfolio that they can just slap right on down on their project, that's it. And that's not collaboration.
Right.
You know?
Well, I think what we're, you know, I guess where my head was at when I asked that question is maybe not, we're not running it up into the marketing world. Like as artists, how do you just make sure you're staying honest somewhere? How do you keep on doing something? You know, it's got to be through personal work, or maybe it's through cooking dinner, or I don't know. Do people travel? You know, what do you do that doesn't? Do you make a massive change? How do you just like toss
this? You hope you're evolving.
Right.
You know? I mean, you don't want to say the same person, and every time you see something that makes you go wow, then that affects you some way, and that's going to affect the things that you do. Right. You know, that if you go see a great play,
yeah,
you know, that can inspire you, and the lighting and the action and all that can inspire you to do something in a job that you're doing.
Sure.
You know, I saw that, and that was so cool, and I want that up there, and I want that there, because, you know, and you want to make it epic, and you want to make it, you know, like a movie set.
Sure. So Laura, like to piggyback off of this, you can kind of be, because you're talking to so many different people, what are your artists saying?
Well,
what's a thing that is resonant? How are they doing it?
Well, I just want to say that like the honesty is where it has to start. I mean, photography or art in general, what makes every one of you unique is your perspective. And how you see the world is what we need it. We need your voice. Like, it's important. And I find so many times I get young photographers that come in and I see something and I want to look at their work, and they're so eager of like, did I show you what you wanted to see? Did I put the, you know, is it right? Is it good? And it's like, I just want to see what your perspective is. I want to look at your, you know, see your personality coming through, or who you are as an artist by these images. And that in itself is absolutely unique. There's no right or wrong with that. But for me, it's like, okay, the perspective is really honest. And then from there, is it something that is sellable? The other part of it too is that, you know, with what we do at the garden party, I represent in a 360 degree. So I'm very aware during the recession of the aspect of social media. And a lot of my artists that I represent, it's really important that they have a social voice, that they have something. Maybe they blog, maybe they Twitter, maybe they, you know, have a huge following on Instagram or this and that. Maybe they don't do any of it and they just do fine art books. Maybe, you know, they have a magazine or something, but there always is that other voice of theirs. The social aspect of it can be a very dishonest platform. And a lot of people think that, oh, okay, they hear somebody did this and that, they have a blog, they're making all this money, I'm gonna start blogging. Okay, that's my thing, I'm gonna do that. But they're not really into it, nor do they understand it. So it's not an authentic voice. And on social, it stinks. I mean, you can hear that right away. It's like just putting on a pair of pants that don't fit. So I always tell my artists, like, I do need that aspect. Like, it's very good that you have a social online life, a presence, but it has to be authentic. And I can't tell you what to do or what's gonna work. You just have to try, and you have to play with it and see what works for you and what you enjoy using as a tool.
Have there been some people that have chosen not to do it? They're just like, God, I can't get any momentum here. I'm not into this.
The artists that I represent, every one of them have something that they enjoy doing.
Sure. Okay.
That there's, it it just is something that they find. Some of them, you know, there's always like one or two things that they do that they enjoy doing and have on social. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all a little bit of peacocks. And the social, you know, and you, as an artist, you do like people, you know, you're an artist, like you want to be seen, you know, and so in using it, that tool as an authentic voice for you as being seen and promoting your work is just another tool. I mean, there's been such a change in our industry, and the one thing that drives me crazy, because, you know, I am a younger voice. I am this person that's come out and really tried to, you know, embrace all of this new stuff that's going on. But I would get a lot of people, it's like, it's not the art, it's, you know, you're selling out, it's not. It's like, you know what, it's the color red. And if you're a painter, do you take the color red and say, I'm not using red anymore? You know, it's stupid. It's like, why? Like, it's just there. It's for you to play with. It's something for you to experience. If you try red, it doesn't work, then don't use red. You know, it's not something that's like at fault to destroy the industry or hurt people. It's just another tool for you and to help you or not help you. You know, and I think it's just like when you're getting into that part of honesty, that's just really important, that you have an honest, authentic voice on there.
Yeah, that's great. You're thinking.
I think I'm at a loss for now.
Here, I'll give it to you.
Thanks. You know, I don't even know about social media. You know, I see some of my guys would do social media, and, you know, some of it was all right. I kind of like social media, again, because I'm a narcissist or whatever, so I like the attention or whatever. But I would see some of my photographers doing that, and the stuff they were putting on social media, I was like, oh my God, you're kind of giving the game away. Which is like, you know, for some of those guys, like they hadn't really done the background work for on their main work for years and years and years, and so they put this junk up on social media that basically confirms that. You know, where you're like, see, you know, like this should be a thing where it's showing like what a visionary you are, and it's actually showing that like my Auntie Dorothy might be like a little bit better than you. You know, and that's a problem. But you know what? Aside from social media, I just reiterate the same thing. You know, this business is no different, and the human beings involved in it are no different from running a restaurant, from doing anything else. People want to belong to things that are cool, whether they're the executive creative director of some amazing agency or some, you know, whatever. They want to be a part of something that's really cool. So your job is to do something that other people are looking across at and being like, you know what, I want a piece of that. And that's the end of the story. I mean, that's what you've got to be doing. If you're chasing the other thing around, then that's boring. Like people who came and knocked on my door were like, can I show you my work? I think I've been doing some. I'm like, oh God, you know what? If you're outside my door and like knocking on it, you're the last person I want to see. You know, nobody wants to like open their door and find someone standing outside there with like with a portfolio or whatever. It's a giant bummer. Of course it is. You know? And you know, there are a few people out there who will, and you know, God bless them, like diligent art buyers who are like, yeah, you know what? I'll see 20 people a week or whatever, and I'll do it, and I'll give them advice on that. But God, my God, it's a huge chore. Of course it is. What you want to do, part of the joy of being, you know, when I was an agent, the people who used to make me sweat were the people who were really good, but they weren't coming to me. I'm like, what's that guy doing over there? Like, he's really good, and he's not knocking on my door. So what's going on here? And then I had to like make a journey towards him to be like, hey, can we have a conversation or whatever? There was a process of discovery for me, and there was a chase involved. And you know what the guy was doing? He was just doing something really cool, and he was doing it over there, and I wanted a piece of it. And that's you know, from the beginning of having our agency, that's what we were trying to do, was trying to do something. When we talked earlier about, you know, whoever those weird people are who smell it, who are like, well, you know, those are the people you want. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to work on good work, because the problem with that is that those people, that might be someone who's really cool at an agency, at Ogilvy or whatever. And what they're going to turn up with is something which is like relatively banal. But the way that you coalesce with other voices in the industry, look, we're all compromised. We're all going to work on crap. But the process of collaboration with other voices out there who are like, this is cool. You know, if at the end of the day, the image that comes out, you're like, well, you know what, you know, it wasn't everything I wanted it to be or whatever, and I was paying the mortgage or whatever. The point is, being part of a community, even if we're whoring at certain points, which we are, being part of a community where you're like, you know what, I'm working with I'm working with other people, I'm working with stuff that I believe in, and other people that I believe in. And to me, that's the only route through it. There really isn't any other magic. There's no point in talking about entering contests or, you know, retweaking your portfolio or whatever. It's all about that.
So if you got honesty in your process, then it isn't necessarily about the outcomes. What you're saying, it's not. You're not looking to tack the prettiest thing up on the wall. You're looking to have like a momentum and an energy.
Whatever it,
whether you're creating something.
Whether you're taking pictures. I mean, I was an agent, so I wasn't taking pictures. But
Sure.
whatever that voice is that you're putting out there, like you got to bank everything on that. You know, whether it's the song and dance that you're doing when I was an agent or whatever, or whether it's a photography, you've got to bank everything on that. That's what you've got. You know, and you know what? Unfortunately, the bad news is like, if that doesn't work, then there are probably all kinds of other things to do where your passion would work.
There's a pause for you. Yeah.
You know, so we're talking about social media, I guess, because there's probably no way we could have a forum without bringing that up at the end, right? You know, but it is this powerful thing, and I do think that, like, trying to tie this to this idea of honesty, you know, we have this access. Like, we were talking last night at this little party, like, I don't know if anyone even knew, like, did Richard Avedon have kids? Did he not? I don't know. You know, it's almost like we just knew his work, and you know, how much he kicked ass, and he was the fashion photographer and the art photographer. And then now, though, with social media, we have all this data, and the access we have to everyone is so, it's all there. You know, and of course, everyone's curating their own data that's going out there on Facebook and blogs and stuff, but still, it's more information than we've ever had. And when I started trying to build a career, there was like, you were supposed to go to New York, show your portfolio, you're supposed to send out cards. And I did think that, you know, this idea, I hated this idea of going to New York and showing my portfolio because I thought it essentially defined me as a loser. You know, like, it was like the knocking on the door. It was like, hi, I suck, you never heard of me, please hire me. You know, like, what could be worse than that? Like, that was setting me up for failure, really, you know? But I thought that, this is before the internet, but I could, like, send out cards, write witty notes, kind of sound kind of authoritative on the phone, and I could create a persona that was a little more, you know, I could use my skills a little better that way, rather than, like, showing up with plastic pages and pictures in them and just the dreariness of them thumbing through your portfolio. You know, through a phone call or through a letter, I could just be faster, and you get in and out and you see a cool photo, and it could be a little more elusive, you know, and maybe I could seem a little more special than I was in person, you know. And then I do think that, okay, harder, was that being honest or was that lying? I don't know, you know what I mean? I think it was creating a smokescreen of sorts, you know, but I think it was, then when social media became a thing, I think I was able to create a persona, call it honest or call it fiction, that was like someone who truly loved photography, someone who loved the work of other photographers, someone who liked being a dad and mixing family and photography and all these things. And then, you know, there was a forum to share all these things. And so, you know, as you're going forward and trying to find a way to promote yourself or to create a path, I think that's where the honesty comes in. You know, like, don't hide these things in your life. Like, you know, don't hide, like, I have kids, and it is a defining thing in this chapter of my life. And I've got these two boys, and I photograph them, but then I also will, you know, take them to a swimming pool, or, like, I've woven this into, whoever hires me knows these things by the time I'm in. And it goes into the equation of what they're assigning me and what they're, you know, considering I might be sensitive to or insensitive to. And so these are, I guess I'd say, for everyone to be honest about the path they're on too, and use those things to what you present to the world. Don't worry about the way it's supposed to be, you know, tap into what you got.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about some audience questions?
Yeah, for sure.
I dropped the ball. I still don't understand what this process is. Are we like passing the mic, or how is this
Yeah,
going?
Phil Donahue style, I
Phil
think.
Donahue?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got to stretch. Yeah, we can talk into my neck. Wow. There's some social media.
Force people to ask questions.
Force people to ask it.
Yeah, I would say row by row.
All right, Phil Donahue, here we go. Who has a question? Feel free to raise your hand. It doesn't have to be like an amazing, brilliant question that's going to blow our minds. Yeah, or it could be, and that'd be awesome, but.
Okay, I'm Matthew Strussel. I'm here for a school thing for college, and I'm about to graduate. And I'd like to know, like, when presenting your portfolio or when contacting potential employers, how often should you, like, say, hey, I'm here, I'm available, without getting too annoying and just hammering it all the time? Like, once a week, once a month? How often should I put myself out there?
We almost need 2 mics for this stuff.
Just know that you're already annoying. Before you've even made the call, you've annoyed them. So don't worry about it. So just do it when you need to do it, and make it something that's we're talking about process, a part of your schedule. I have some photographers that, they do it seasonally. Some of them don't want to do it at all and they just want to leave it to me. I've known other people that they have a calendar when they do and they keep notes. I, as an agent, I'm there with you, Not everybody's jumping for joy when I'm on the phone, The first thing I say is, hi, do you have a moment? Because on that other line, something that I learned during the recession was that, we'd call, I was at an agency, was like, get that work, keep it going, what's going on? And I would call and I knew that there had been layoffs. I knew that other person on the other line was going through it. I mean, you don't know what's going on.
Right.
You don't know if their dog, they just had to put him down the night before. You don't know if their boyfriend just left them or what the hell. Like we're saying, they're human. So just be generous. And when you call, be yourself and say, hey, do you have a moment? I wanted to introduce myself. This is what I do. I wanted to understand, is it possible for me to come in and show you my work, or maybe instead shoot you an email? Would you mind if I put you on my mailing list? And if I send it to you seasonally, is that okay? Just ask questions and be honest. And if they say, you know what, I'm really busy right now, then say, you know what, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Thank you so much for your time. Maybe I could call you back in a week or in a month, whatever. Let me know. Because you just have to know that at that moment that you're dealing with another human being. You're not just dealing with somebody that holds all the cards and has got your career on the other side. It's not American Idol, It's just another person on the other side, and you just, I've been there because I was an actress and I auditioned, and when you would go, I'd made it my goal just to meet somebody new. That's it. Not to get the role, just to maybe walk in the room and meet someone new. And make a friend or make a connection with a human being. And that's it.
Right.
And that saved me. And then afterwards, I'd always make a plan to go out and do something and forget it. Forget about the audition and just move on. So being vulnerable, being honest, being human, be yourself, and know that you're dealing with another human being on the other line is really important.
It's awesome.
Bring your A game.
Bring your A game?
Yes.
Did you want to say something, Bill?
No, I had nothing to say. I wanted to hear what Darrell said.
If you're gonna go, bring it. Make sure that there's good work.
Is this an A game right here? Is this an example of, thanks, Jeff.
I'll have what he's having.
Can anybody explain what each one is? What's that?
Is there a menu for this tray of hallucinogens that just came up to the panel? Are you going to say something, Bill? Okay. Another question. And am I walking around too much, Adam? I'm fine. Yeah.
I have a question for Julian. You had a kind of a notorious interview recently with PDN, Amy Wolf, about why you got out of the industry. And I came to this today thinking a lot about that and thinking about you and your story and understanding now that you're a restaurateur. that you've moved on, and maybe that you're passionate, well, working with the restaurant. Okay. But you've changed. And I was interested in hearing, now that you've moved on from the photo industry, you no longer rep photographers, what stake you have in it in being here tonight?
It's a great question.
Well, because I was asked. And I guess, something about, that being asked to do that interview, I didn't pitch to do that interview. That was Amy coming to me and saying, you must have something to say if you're kind of giving it up. So I gave that interview, and I guess, that was intended to oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that was
okay.
intended, I hear myself bouncing back.
Yeah.
That was intended to just be a kind of parting, a relatively generous parting of the way. What happened after that was that it opened up a new conversation. Was people were coming to me and saying, well, actually, what does that mean or whatever? And so, my reason for being here or my reason for talking to anybody who now calls who wants to talk about that interview is that I guess if it opened up a series of questions for them that is interesting, I wasn't pitching it as some way that I would carry on and be, a kind of a motivational speaker for the photo industry. But what happened is people were like, well, tell me a little bit more about that, or like, what does that mean, or whatever. And so, a combination of things. One is the slightly disingenuous part of me would say, well, look, if it's of some use, I'll talk to whoever is around. The other narcissistic, egomaniacal side of me says, like, I like the attention.
I think I would call that honest.
Well, it's nice.
Right? No, I'm not making fun of you here.
But it's true.
I'm like, you're telling the truth.
Well,
yeah.
someone's saying like, well, what do you think about that or whatever? You're like, really, me? And so you say it.
Right. Because, there is a story in making a huge change. It's not like everybody needs to see something necessarily to the bitter end. How did you put it to me in the phone, Darrell? A drowning person needs someone to tell them that they're drowning because they usually don't realize it themselves. Yeah.
What was that in regards to?
Yeah. Can you pass that down to, yeah.
Just talking about things in general, about the photography industry and, where's it going? And it's like, well, is it good? Is it bad? And it was like, sometimes when someone's drowning, you've got to, they don't know they're necessarily drowning, and people around them don't know they're drowning. And so somebody's got to go over there and pull them out of the water. And that was, some poor analogy I was making for something. I don't quite remember what it was. But
Well, you're making it fit in here pretty good. Yeah. I brought it up. Sorry about that. Another question? Yeah.
You're doing great.
Thanks.
Early in the conversation, we talked a little bit about photographers that haven't been picking up their cameras or aren't producing work. With social media and kind of the drive to always like put something out or get feedback for something, where do you see photographers that are producing too much work or are in a way, cheapening themselves because of such?
I'll take the mic. Thanks. Anybody dying to answer that thing, Timothy? Awesome.
The social media, I think it's hooked to brain chemistry, and here you said, look, I wanted my narcissistic, self, fed for this weekend, so I wanted to come here. Why do we like to count likes? And, isn't that what you said?
That's like a précis of what I said.
Yeah.
Somewhat ungenerous précis.
Yeah. I feel like the way these systems work, they trigger something in our brain and, some endorphin that makes us feel like, oh, they like it. It's not like they friended me, it's not just like some numerical quantification, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's like they liked it, Can they love it next,
That's coming.
Yeah,
we know that's coming.
Yeah.
Stages of liking and
No,
loving.
yeah, I really love it, I don't know. Why do we do these things and why do we play these games? There's a need to send a message out there, but then it's a feedback loop too. And I think that, there's this feeling of like, ooh, look, they like it, It's a little way to, feel like some message was communicated that day. Then you do see people seem like they're hitting the morphine button too many times in the hospital, you know what I mean? And it's just like, you know, and I don't know, I think you can't set up a rule for these. Whose question was this? Oh, yours. You can't really set up a rule for these things, but I think you know it when you feel like someone's just like cluttering or they're, you know, masturbatorily filling your feed with, you know, their data.
But we may not even be the right people to talk to about that, because, you know, since having the restaurant, we've had to do a few shoots as a restaurant with Bon Appetit and Condé Nast Traveler, and they're sending us along photographers who I didn't know before, Instagram photographers who are now shooting that kind of stuff. So I would go on, I'd be like, you know, like someone like Alice Gow. People know Alice? Instagram star, I don't know, 250,000 followers or whatever.
Anybody know her?
She's like she's one of those like Instagram vanguard. So I didn't know who this person is. You go in, you know what? She posts tons of material, but it works for her demographic, and it's got her into a successful place. So there's not really a way of saying, shit, you know what? Alice posts way too much material. This is kind of crazy. She's cheapening her brand. She understands, she has an instinct that certainly I don't think any of us here have for what works in that marketplace. She has 225,000 followers, and like advertisers are coming to her because she brings something to the table, not just as a photographer, but actually as a brand. You know?
Control. She's not a victim.
Well, she's also a brand. She's also like Alice. They're like, shit, you know what? If Alice then posts some of the stuff that she's been shooting for, you know, Hilton hotels on her Instagram blog, they immediately get the exposure of this person who has 250,000 followers. So she's understood a paradigm where we were thinking like, oh, isn't Instagram kind of about publicizing our other career that we have? Is this just another publicize? No, for some of these people, this is the work. This is the core element of the work. It's not, they probably don't even have a portfolio. They maybe don't even have a website. They just have a colossal and very, very powerful Instagram following.
They have a given audience.
It's great.
Yeah, and then what advertiser wouldn't want a piece of that?
That's something interesting, because with the garden party, all of our artists, we do analytics on them. So not only do I show the portfolio of the work, but I also show their given audience. So, and many times I had one client say, you know, I have one photographer has a massive following on Instagram, and I had a client that said, could he come in and teach us all how he does it? And I said, sure, how much? And they're like, you're gonna charge us? And I said, yeah, it's a talent. Yeah, he's cultivated this, and yeah, he's not gonna just give you the answers for free. You know, he's worked on this, just like he's worked on his photography. But yes, the analytics too have given another way of giving the power back to the artist and saying, you know, if you post this, there's gonna be this given audience, there's gonna be a drive to action, a call to action to this, and these people are gonna go out and purchase this or look at it or, you know, view it and like it and reblog. I mean, the big thing now is like we wanna go viral. We're gonna make this campaign go viral. And I always I laugh because I'm like, okay, it's not something you can control, you know, unless you've got an insanely smart social media team behind the campaign, which they rarely never spend the money to do that. They just think it's gonna be so damn good because we're amazing, it's gonna go viral. And it's like, okay, it's a razor video. So,
nice.
I mean, just like you were saying, you know, I think that what I call now disposable content, you know, it's this thing that's almost just like it's a mason jar and you want to fill it up with lightning bugs and then you just let it go. And that's it. It lasts for 3 months, maybe 3 weeks. It's not like a billboard that sits there for a year or 2 years. It's just this content and it's relevant very quick. So many people do have to post and they have to get it up there and keep it going and keep it going. The thing is just keep it authentic and be careful you don't look desperate, you know?
Another question? I'm gonna try this differently this time. Don't swallow this thing. I'll need you to come down the aisle. Yeah.
So
You see that?
I see it.
It's a very tiny microphone.
Yeah, it's really close.
Super cool.
So this question's for Laura.
I'm curious about what advice you'd offer photographers who are about to start or interested in starting a relationship with an agent, as well as if there's specific markets that you need an agent to get access to.
I just want to tell you right now, I don't have the answers. So I think this is often that I don't have the answers. I, just like you, have to work really hard, and I have to, make plans and put myself out there and be vulnerable and take risks. And many times people think that when they come to an agent or they get an agent, like, now my career starts. Your career should have already happened. Like, when you come to see me, you should already have 3 editorial, 2 advertising, a catalog, or some given work. And I always say that it's a shared business, that you have your personal project. And then there's some people that, just have a personal project that's just so outstanding that perks my interest. I think that when you're going to see an agent, just be careful, because I think that it's important that like you said, you have an authentic voice when you search them out, because sometimes people can get lost in it all, and you get so many opinions. And agents, we're here to sell. That's what it is. We are gonna figure out how you are a commodity. So you want to be careful, and you want to make sure that you already have yourself really grounded in who you are and what your business is, and that you're ready to share that business with someone else. And that's when we come into play. Knowing your market is really key. I mean, if you want to be a fashion photographer, then you shouldn't be living in Chicago and trying to do it. Like, you should go to Europe for a while, or maybe come to New York, or you need to know your market and know who those agents are. Maybe if you want to just do more of like the lifestyle and whatnot, Minneapolis is fantastic for that. Or I'm a food photographer, then Chicago is really a great town for that. Like, really understanding your market and who you like out there and who's doing it, and following other people and having a mentorship and whatnot. But I really think that it's important that when you reach out and you find an agent, that you do your research. I get many people too that come to meet with me, and they sit down and I like the work, and then I'm like, okay, so did you read our mission or look at the website? And they're like, no, I didn't. And I'm like, why do you want to be? Because you're an agent, and I heard you can get a lot of jobs. And I think it's important to make sure that you really do your research on why you want to be with that agency, and who else is on that roster, and read their mission statements. We really take time to write those, and that is going to tell you how we run our business. And not every agency does it the same. Everybody has, like Julian was saying, we have a very different roadmap on how we get to those and get those jobs.
Another question?
So this might be a little bit more on the business side of things for kind of working with clients, in terms of kind of fostering those relationships with clients that actually can see your vision, empower what you're doing, empower collaboration. Are you finding unique ways or specific ways that you can continue to build those relationships over time? Because as you said, it's not just about like the photographer, it's about your relationships that you're actually building.
Thanks.
Oh, that's for me? Oh. For me in my work, I would say that there's things that I fit into nicely, and then there's things like, say, advertising. Say, it's always like we're backing in a truck into some space and it doesn't fit, where it's like, oh, we just barely got them to approve you. You know what I mean? It's never, it's always has this feeling of like, the art director convinced the client to hire me, for the project. I don't even think my work's very esoteric, but I think that it doesn't really live and breathe advertising. I don't think my work lives and breathes, the fabric of advertising in the way some people's do, So for certain things, the advertising things, for me, there's very little loyalty, it's kind of like there's a job that someone finds that might be unique for me, and I do this job, and everybody is happy, and then maybe another one comes a couple months later, But I do corporate work also, And that work seems to have this more loyalty. And I think that, for me as a working photographer, like all these kind of philosophical things about personal work aside, the thing that has kind of helped me as I've gotten older is to not necessarily know myself, like Darrell said, but I think I kind of learned myself maybe a while ago, but that didn't really help me it helped me take better pictures, but it didn't help me like in a business sense. But the thing that did was the idea of knowing my role in a given job. Like, is this your idea that you want me to bring to, execute for you in a professional manner? Or is this where you want me to come up with the idea and have this be my entire thing that you get to have? Or am I a cog in a bigger machine? Like, what is my role in this? And that's the thing that I think I could only achieve it with like maturity. Like when I was younger, I was brattier, and if I would do an assignment and I didn't think I had my voice in it, I sucked and I was a failure. And then I think now I'm able to look at things and be like, well, this one I'll probably get to chime in on. This one, it's kind of, the idea dominates this. And so I just need to put the pieces together for these people, And so I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I think I am, where it's like, I think I've learned to kind of look at my role in these various jobs and then try to figure out how to, like at the end of the day, like I'm not a crazy esoteric artist. I'm a suburban dad, buying the groceries and raising the kids and stuff. And so that has to work. And so I have to remember that, there's no temper tantrums, there's no walking off the set, there's none of this. It's all about trying to figure out what's my role in this and how can I help? And, like as beta as that sounds as opposed to alpha, there's times to be the alpha and there's times to be the beta, for a pussy like me.
All right.
First of all, thank you for being here. Just being here is kind of shooting above the target already, so thanks so much. My question is kind of the elephant in the room question. What if being authentic and true to yourself doesn't pay the bills?
What if being authentic and true to yourself does not pay the bills?
Then that's the deal.
That's it. Microphone?
Yeah. I mean, if you have to be doing what you like, there's a lot of people, I'm sure, that can do things that are mundane every single day in photography and be fine. I just couldn't do it. I mean, I've had opportunities to shoot catalogs and big catalogs, and on a couple of them, I've even taken on the job, and luckily, fate took it away, because I know I would have killed myself, at the end of it. But that's just me. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being able to do a lot of different things, but you have to do what it is that you want to do, and you can't just say, well, this is a job. If you're creative, you have to create. And I mean, you can do that regular job and still be creative on your own time. I couldn't do it. I just had to, I need the control, and I need to be creative, and I just can't do it any other way. And if I can't do it, then I'm not going to do it. I'll just sit here. That's fine. And I've done a lot of sitting. And that's okay, but the main thing is to be honest with yourself, and if you want to be a creative photographer, you want to be an artist photographer, you have to do it and not settle for less. I mean, there's a draw line in the sand. I mean, you can make some compromises, but don't make too many, because you got to live with yourself for the rest of your life, and I've made a lot of decisions in my career, which weren't necessarily probably the best business-wise, but I set a certain standard that I wouldn't do this, and if it got boring, then I would change. I wanted to do a lot of people, and then I got bored with people. It just drove me crazy. So then I just switched to still life, and then I did still life for a while, And I did, tons of that, and then that was driving me crazy. And so I started bringing people back in, and then I've stayed on people. But I think it's important to do what you want to do, or do what you think you should do. Stay honest, and that's it.
Thanks.
So your question was, what if you're being yourself and then it doesn't fit the marketplace, right? It doesn't pay. Yeah. There was a period a couple years ago, and I do think like with Instagram and, Facebook and these things, it did open my world to photographers I never knew, doing great work. And, totally inspiring, and then it was almost like seeing the universe and realizing you're a speck too, you know what I mean? Like, you thought the world was like Danny Lyons, Bruce Davidson, and you realized it was enormous, And there was a period where the photographers I was most fascinated with, and I'm talking about like, say, 6 months ago, none of them worked in photography. They had their own work, and they put all their energy into their own work. And one I knew worked at a homeless shelter, as like an intake guy. Another one was hostess at a restaurant, worked in the restaurant business. And then I do remember, even when I got out of college, Joel Peter Witkin, a photographer who I admired, reading an essay that he wrote for Maximum Effect, where he talked about getting out of grad school, having all these accolades, knowing what he wanted to do with his work, and then started his first night as a waiter at a high-end restaurant in New Mexico. And so, I'm not against this idea that you do something else and then you do your work. I think here, this is ASMP, there's an acknowledgement of business, and that's great when it can work out, but it's not for everybody. And powerful work comes from all different sources. So I guess that would be my answer.
Thanks, Timothy. So, everybody, we're gonna do one more question, and then I'm gonna give it back to Carl. And feel free to rush the stage and try to get to a panelist first, because I know other people have questions. Yeah. It's very tiny.
Do I hold it?
You can hold
it. So I have a question, like, how do you or the photographers you rep or used to rep balance like making personal work that kind of the end goal, like you're a photographer, that's your job. How do you balance like making personal work, knowing that like at the end of the day, you're gonna try to sell this, or you're gonna try to get hired to shoot something like this? How do you balance that? Like, how do you keep it sincere? And just, like how do you walk that line?
I just want to say that when you do personal work, you shouldn't be doing it to sell it. Like, it's personal. So your main objective should be trying to, as an artist, work something out. I don't know what that is, but that is your sacred thing. So, the objective should be whatever it is inside of you're trying to achieve or work out in yourself, or something, an idea that you have that you want to pursue. I recently had seen David Lynch talk, and it was really, he's a huge mentor of just somebody who's always just done something completely off the cuff that is like, to me, he's an American icon of film and photography, and he's a painter and magician, and everything, musician and whatnot. So he was talking about the experience of when people view his work, that he's not a part of that. That when he puts something up or he makes a film, that's it, it's done. Like, that's all he does. And then you look at it and that's it. Like, that's your own private thing and how you view it. And that really resonated in me, and just like why he is so amazing at what he does, because it's 100% David Lynch just sitting in that, diner in LA for how many years, writing all these amazing movies, and just sitting and writing them on a napkin in a diner, and on all these things that it's in his head that he had to get out. And I'm just so fucking thankful that he did that, because it changed my life experience. So I beg all of you, if you walk away from any of this and whatnot, yes, as an agent, money is really important. We all need to make money and survive. But at the same time, I just really hope that you take a moment and try to figure out and listen to yourself of what is your authentic voice. And when you're doing that personal stuff, really make it a genuine, authentic thing, not just about something with the objective of how to get work from it or to sell it. And I promise you, well, I shouldn't promise, but I think that it will get attention because, like I said, we need it as humans. You know, we since the beginning of time, we've been interested in each other's stories. And that's like the basic essence of who we are as people, you know?
Well, again, wow. And with that, I think we'll wrap it up. We'll be here for a while to mingle, rush the stage, whatever. This is going to be the closest thing to an Oscar speech I'll have, so I'll try not to screw it up. I got a lot of people to thank. But first, we got a little fun things to give away. Members, ASMP members, you all got a ticket. Now's the time for that ticket. Our two sponsors, Flashlight and Honey Digital. First, Flashlight is going to give away a $500 package. Whatever you want. You want the Klieg lights, you want the smoke, whatever. Talk to Darrell. $500 is going to go to the ticket that Mr. Dave draws out of that bowl. $500 Flashlight package. It's 500, right? Not 50, Darrell, right? Yeah, it's 500. Yeah. 500 goes to ticket number 156872. 156872. We got it. All right. And then the other great prize, one more prize, from Honey Digital. From Honey Digital, another great sponsor, a one-day Phase 1 package rental. 1 day to do whatever you want with this kick-ass camera. Goes to 156865. All right, right over here. Excellent. So I want to thank, first of all, our panel, Julian, Timothy, Laura, Darrell, Dave for moderating. I also want to thank our bartenders, Sarah and Michelle. Let's hear it for the bartenders. Marty for setting up the lights. And Alex for doing the sound. Bryce and Dave for doing our web design and stuff. I don't know if anybody else has mentioned this, has noticed this, but our design of our postcards and our websites and stuff has really looked really, really good in the past year or so. That's Bryce and David. Bryce Bordenkesher, David Anderson. Thank you, Bryce. Our stuff looks great. And again, a nice shout out to the power trio that put all this together, Raul, Andrea, and Emily, who planted this seed many months ago and put all their sweat, and it kind of grew. And a while ago, Emily said, like, oh, I feel like I'm having a baby with those whole things. So I don't know if, you know, how's it doing? You know, it's all right? Good. And lastly, thank all of you for coming. You guys took a risk. Like you saw this postcard. What the hell is the new unknown? I'll take a risk. Yeah, let's do it. So thank you all for coming. Have a good night. Stick around. Rush the stage.